Hi and welcome to Easy Fishing. Now, as you can see, it's winter. Although the sun is shining, I am wrapped up like an Eskimo because it's turning cold, which for me means the start of predator fishing. By predators I mean pike, perch and occasionally zander. Now whilst I'm fishing, walking the bank, fish spotting, etc., I see a lot of people who are either missing really essential items of tackle or have totally the wrong gear. So I'm just going to run you through what I use and what I consider to be absolutely essential items of tackle. So where do we start? Well, I think the first and most important thing, and I still see people fishing without it, is wire traces. Some people fish with braid and they say, oh yeah, the pike won't bite through braid, but trust me, they do. Nowadays there's no excuse for it. If you're a beginner, don't know how to tie your own traces, go into your local tackle shop. There you'll find, in a good tackle shop that is, a selection of pike tackle by primarily Drennan, Fox and a few other manufacturers. But if you go for Drennan or Fox, you can't really go wrong. So first of all, wire traces. Here I have one of my rig bins. It's just a plastic tub with a screw-on lid, and inside a foam thing, and I keep all my traces on one of these. I have 2 or 3 of these because I have quite a lot of traces. These ones are with single and double trebles, and I have another one with single hooks. Which leads me on to the next point. Do you have to have trebles? No, you do not. You can catch pike quite adequately with single hooks. Obviously of an appropriate size, anything from say size 4 up to 2 or 3/0, I guess. And at the moment I'm experimenting. I am using circle hooks. So far with promising results, but I'm not going to shout too much about it until I get there. So, bits and pieces. So you have a wire trace. I keep all my bits, everything I need, bar the traces and reels, in one of these Fox boxes, but whosever's you use, there's loads on the market. So what do you need? Floats. These are Drennan, a slim piker that's rated to carry a load of 6 grams, and this is probably the float I use more than any other for my piking. A Drennan Zeppler, which is just slightly more bulbous. I use these in rougher conditions or when I'm live baiting or want to suspend a dead bait. And my float ledgering dead bait floats, which are a Drennan Pike Waggler. They're fastened bottom end only. You pull them down to there in the water. When you get a pike picks up the bait, they tend to just lift up and lie flat. Very noticeable, very, very sensitive. I do have others. I have what's called a sub float, which is for float paternostered or straight paternostered dead baits or live baits. Don't use it very much. A kind of unusual float, which is a Polaris, and I use this in deep water when I'm float ledgering. Again, very sensitive, as you can see, big bright top visible at long range. Again, not a float I use very often. 95% of my piking is done with these. If you're making your own pike traces, There are various ones and brands and styles. One that I really like is this one, Drennan Soft Strand, because I have noticed on pressurised waters pike can pick up baits, feel the wire and eject them. This stuff is very soft and you can knot it even, you don't need to crimp or twist it. I also have others, another Drennan, and a very special one. Now this stuff is unique. I first learnt about it through John Wilson's Go Fishing. It's called Canelli Wonder Tress, and it's like a braid with a line in it, and it is so soft. It is brilliant. This one is quite a light breaking strain, about 18 pounds, but I have others. And I find I get less drop takes with this, but it's almost impossible to get hold of. It's very hard to find. If anybody knows where I can get it, other than future fishing, please let me know. Hook wise, another hook I'm experimenting with, circle hooks. So far, promising results. For the rest of my piking, most of my traces are made up with these in 4, 6 and 8, but I guess size 6 is the most one. I'm also using the Drennan Esox range as well. A couple of other things to point out. You can make your trace up with crimps. These are Drennan Slim crimps. Trace makers fall into 2 categories: twiddled, twisted, whatever you call it, or crimpers. I do have crimps, but I think I prefer twiddling or twisted, but each to their own. For ledgering, I quite often use these. Lead clips on the end, line runs through here, low resistance, keeps the bait up off the bottom and the line, reduced resistance. This is a Fox one, but I've added a bit of extra buoyancy in the form of a bait popper. Something I use a lot, it's a little tube of foam, fill it with grease and put it in my rod ring, first rod ring, run the line through it, put it through, and it greases the line up when I want my line to float. I carry a few bombs and shot. Here are some 2 SSG and 3 SSG that I use a lot. And obviously I have a selection of bombs up to about 3 ounces for when I need to cast out a long way. John Roberts, ledger booms, like these a lot. So what else do you really need? An unhooking mat. I've had this one years, I don't know what make it is, but I've had it years. If you are not confident enough to unhook pike in the water, have an unhooking mat, essential for beginners. The next thing, I still see people using inadequate landing nets. Here's my favourite, unusual. This is an American made lure net, and it's big. It's big enough to take any pike. It's primarily designed as a folding, because this end folds down. It came with a short handle for use on boats. Best net I've ever had for pike. It's got a very strange nylon material that the meshing's made out of, and hooks don't seem to get stuck in it very often, and I like this. This one is probably ending the end of its life, but until it dies I'm going to carry on using it. But I do have the conventional triangular landing net, which, this is a 42-inch job. I keep it in one of these EVA Corum net tubes, stops the smell and the water which is great when you put it back in the end of the car at the end of the day. A landing net handle. This is a Drennan Super Specialist, extending twist and lock, extends to, I don't know, 6 feet or so, but collapses down to an easily transportable length. Fits in my quiver. Some decent screw point bank sticks. I'm not a lover of pods. I like to be able to move my rods around. I don't like having the rods spaced together. There are times when I'm forced to use a pod on a concrete surface, but that's rare. These are quite long, extend up so I can prop the rod up in the air. Nice simple butterfly rest, so the line is free running. You can use bitel arms if you like. I do sometimes. This might surprise people. I consider this essential. A little cheap whip for catching live or dead baits. And I have to be honest, I don't live bait very often. I do sometimes, but I normally prefer to catch and knock on the head and use them as fresh dead baits. To that end, I carry a small box full of a few hooks and stuff in case I need them. And that are the main bits. Now the other thing I want to cover is I see a lot of people fishing with totally inadequate rods and reels and terrible line. Now I use 2 reels, pair of ancient Daiwas. I don't know how many years old they are. They're a few years old now. They're an MCAS 5000. They're quite a chunky reel. Got spare spools. The one loaded with mono, one with braid. Now my mono is an absolute minimum of 15 pound breaking strain. This might seem silly when you're only catching 3 or 4 pound pike, but I like a good strong mono to, if I get snagged, I can pull the trebles straight, and I'd never want to leave trebles in a pike because you're condemning it to death. I have spare spools loaded with, I think it's 40 pound braid, and I have to be honest, I use braid a lot. Sets the hooks better. You can use, at the moment I'm experimenting as well with Drennan's E-socks in 65 pound, which sounds ridiculous, but in a couple of experiments I've actually managed to cast a dead bait rig into a tree, and I damn well nearly pulled the tree up by its roots, and I got my rig back. I didn't leave a dead bait hanging in a tree. Quite impressed with it so far. It's the same diameter in 60 pound, incidentally, as 15 pound mono, so it's not overly thick. Other essentials. Now people wonder why I haven't mentioned rods. Well, I use 2 types of rods. I either use, I picked these up from a show last year, from the big one, and they're really cheap. They're a little 8-foot 2-piece 2 pound test curve, what they call a stalker. Now people are probably wondering or thinking I've lost my marbles here, but I use these on the canal. Now the average canal pike is not very big. You could be lucky and get a 20 pounder, but these are absolutely perfect for close range work. Being fiberglass, they're quite robust, they have a lovely action, and they also double up as carp stalker rods, but they make a superb close range pike rod. Now Obviously, if you are fishing a big gravel pit, these aren't what you want. For that end, I have a couple of 3-pound test curve big rods. Same reel, same line, definitely braid if I'm fishing at a distance, with drifter floats or whatever, but because of health issues, most of my sessions are short ones done on venues close to home, which is the canal, so you will see these in action a lot. I also have a pair of 9-footers in 2 3/4 pound test curve should I feel the need, but I don't use them very well. But I'm rapidly falling in love with these rods, and they were a tenner each. Now anybody can afford that, even kids doing paper rounds. So if you're just getting into piking and you're only doing close range piking, these are great. For on the canal, I found these are pretty much unbeatable. They'll cast a small mackerel bait to the other side of the canal, sardines, sprats, dead baits, small dead baits, all that sort of stuff, small live baits, perfectly adequate. I see people with 13-foot, 3 1/4 pound test curve carp rods or pike rods on the canal. You don't need it. If you're fishing a big gravel pit, you're fishing somewhere like Chew, where there's a possibility, more than a possibility, you could latch into a fish of a lifetime of 40 pounds plus, yes. Or you're trying to punch out a big mackerel bait 60 yards, these won't do that, but my 12-foot, 3-pound test curve rods will do that. I bought them years ago. They're getting old, but they still work. So that's basically most of the stuff that you need to go piking. I use a quiver to carry my rods. I can get 2 or 3 rods in here, no problem. Umbrella should I feel that the day will warrant it. Landing net handle, etc, etc. So in my bits and pieces bag, I have hand wipes, all the usual bits and pieces, and something else that I forgot to mention but I think is brilliant for beginners. These are marketed by Fox Rage gloves, and they're I'm not sure what they're made out of, some kind of I think they're sort of like a chainmail and man-made material glove. If you're uncertain about handling pike, get yourself a pair of these. If you can't afford it, get yourself a good thick leather gardening glove, and I'll show you when I get the chance how to use these and how to unhook pike safely without damaging them, because a lot of people are frightened of pike. If you've got gloves on that you know they can't bite you through, you're going to be much more confident about handling them. Other essentials, a big pair of forceps. That's what I mean, a big pair of forceps. About 1 foot long. Yeah, you can unhook anything with them. In case of dire emergencies, I've only ever had to use them once. Got a pair of cutters to cut treble hooks up. I've only ever had to use them once on a really deep hook pike that just swallowed a bait on the spot. But good to have. And that's, I would say, most of the essentials. Comfortable chair to sit on, because piking does tend to be a sit and wait game. Now, there is another side to piking. The stuff I'm showing here now is mostly used for live and dead baiting, but you may want to consider lure fishing, and I usually can use one of these for lure fishing, 8 foot long. They cast a lure out quite adequately. I do carry a small selection of artificials, but I'm not the greatest lure angler in the world. I've had pike to mid doubles on it, but if I'm honest, I prefer sink and draw twitching dead baits, because pike seem to hit them and hold on to them. So there you go, that's most of the bits you need. But the most essential thing, strong line, wire traces, a decent landing net and unhooking mat, and a thick pair of gloves. If you've got those, you're all set to go. So don't be fooled into thinking you have to go and buy a whole new set of rods. If you've got a set of carp rods, £2 and above will do fine. I fish one water occasionally that's absolutely full of jack pike, and I use a pair of barbel rods for them sometimes. Heavy line still, £15 line, but a lighter rod to make the fish fun to play on. But these little 8-footers, they're brilliant, and they do everything that I want on the canal. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope I haven't missed anything out. Probably have, named me. So until next time, goodbye from Easy Fishing. Catch up with you soon.